Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sai, and today I'll be presenting my project on accessibility to essential services using QGIS. I'll be discussing how we can use geospatial analysis to better understand service accessibility and how that information can drive more equitable urban planning. To begin, let's quickly go over the main objectives of my study. Access to services like hospitals, schools, and police stations is critical for the quality of life in any community. However, not everyone has equal access to these essential services, and disparities can exist depending on where people live. In Montgomery County, Maryland, where there is a mix of suburban, urban, and rural areas, these disparities can be significant. The goal of my project was to identify areas in the county that are underserved and to analyze how population density and socioeconomic factors such as income can influence access to these services. Ultimately, the hope was that this analysis could help urban planners and policymakers improve access and reduce these disparities. My research was guided by three main questions. First, which areas in Montgomery County have limited access to essential services within a 10-minute drive? This question focuses on identifying where residents might be facing barriers in accessing services. Question 2. How does population density affect access to essential services? We wanted to understand if high-density areas, which tend to have larger populations, have enough service infrastructure to meet demand. Question 3. What's the relationship between socioeconomic factors like household income and access to services? This would help me to explore whether lower-income communities are disproportionately affected by limited access to critical services. Now, why Montgomery County? It's a good representation of a region that's rapidly growing and diversifying. It has both urban centers like Silver Spring and more rural areas like Poolsville. The county provides a varied landscape where disparities in access could exist. For my analysis, I used a combination of datasets from trusted sources. First is the Maryland GIS Data Catalog, which provides data on services like schools, libraries, fire stations, police stations, bus routes. It also had datasets from the US Census about population density and the ACS Census, where I found data on median household income. I also pulled datasets from the ArcGIS Hub, which provided data on US hospitals and North American roads. Moving on to the methodology, let me walk you through my key steps. First was data preparation. I began by filtering all the datasets in QGIS to focus on Montgomery County. This was important because the data that I had originally spanned either across Maryland or sometimes even the country as a whole, and I only needed the county-specific data. Second step was buffer analysis. To estimate accessibility, I created a 5-mile buffer around essential services like hospitals, schools, and police stations, which approximately reflects a 10-minute drive time. I then merged these buffers to create a single layer representing areas that have access to services. Then I created two overlay maps. One was to show population density classified into quintiles, and another to show median household income classified into income brackets. Both of these were overlaid with the service accessibility zones to identify high demand areas and low income neighborhoods that have limited service access. Here we see the first of the three visualizations I created. This map shows the accessibility zones for essential services in Montgomery County. The orange shaded areas represent the regions within a 10-minute drive of hospitals, schools, libraries, police, and fire stations. As you can see, the northern and western regions of the county are relatively underserved with more gaps in service coverage. This could be important because it can identify specific areas where infrastructure and investment might be needed to improve access. Now let's look at the population density map. The different shades represent the density of the population, with darker areas indicating higher population concentrations. When overlaid with the accessibility zones, we can see that areas with higher population density, such as parts of Silver Spring, have insufficient service coverage. Although they are within the zones themselves, the actual locations of certain services like hospitals and fire stations don't seem to meet the demand of with considering the population density. This could indicate that these areas have higher demand, but the infrastructure may not be adequate to meet that, which can result in strain on existing resources. This next map shows socioeconomic disparities in accessibility. The colors represent median household income, with darker areas showing lower income. When overlaid with the service accessibility zones, there's somewhat of a pattern, as lower income areas, especially in the eastern part of Montgomery County, have limited access to essential services like schools, hospitals, and libraries. This could highlight an intersection between income and access to services, reinforcing the need for targeted interventions. Based on these visualizations, some key findings can be observed. The first is the accessibility gap. Underserved areas in the northern and western parts of Montgomery County show some gaps in service accessibility. In population mismatch, higher density areas, such as in Silver Spring, can face a mismatch between demand and service availability. Finally, income disparities. Lower income areas in the eastern part of the county have disproportionately poorer access to essential services, underscoring the need for more equitable infrastructure investment. In conclusion, my study reveals some gaps in service access across Montgomery County, particularly with high density and low income areas being underserved. These findings could be valuable for urban planners and policymakers, providing a foundation for more equitable service distribution. Moving forward, there are plenty of opportunities for more improvement in this study, such as incorporating real drive time analysis tools, such as Google API, for more accurate service accessibility estimates rather than the rough 5-mile estimate that I used. Also, you can consider analyzing service capacity, such as hospital bed availability or school enrollment quotas, to get more accurate estimates on demand and accessibility. Future research could also expand the scope of services analyzed to include parks and recreational facilities to obtain a more comprehensive view on community accessibility. Thank you for your time, and that's all for my project.